Thank you for attending. As a reminder, we're recording today's meeting. You should have gotten a notice about that. And I believe we have the chat turned off, but you can always feel free to send an email with questions as a follow-up. So my name is Marcus Grubbs, Director of the Office of Enterprise Sustainability at the Department of Administration. Thank you for attending our 4th annual All-Employee Lunch and Learn event in honor of Climate Week. This week is Climate Week. And so this event is a collaboration between the Department of Administration and the Pollution Control Agency, and we're so glad that you all have come. This is amazing turnout. I'm looking right now, and it shows we're at 199 and climbing. And we're glad that you could take your lunch hour to be with us. Climate change is happening, and we're all feeling its effects. Last winter was the warmest on record, and this summer has brought flooding and extreme storm events across our state. Climate pollution is harming our health, costing us money through increased homeowner and car insurance premiums, and threatening the things we love most about our state, like hiking the trails in our state parks. And we know that these changes are impacting some of our neighbors more than others. That's why the state has a goal of ensuring that Minnesota lands and our communities are prepared for climate change. The state is making progress towards our goals in the Climate Action Framework, which was launched just 2 years ago, investing $1 billion in public transit, $100 million in climate smart roads, bridges, parks, and stormwater drains, and investing in our workforce by creating a clean economy apprenticeship program. Dr. Kate Knuth, Climate Director of the MPCA, will be providing an update on the Climate Action Framework today. We're equally committed to lowering the environmental impact of state operations. We've cut greenhouse gas emissions from state operations by 40%, but we've still got more to do. Dr. Richard Graves, Professor and Program Director at the University of Minnesota Center for Sustainable Building Research, will be talking today about their work lowering greenhouse gas emissions from the built environment. This Climate Week, we recognize that as state employees, we all have a role to play in protecting public health and our natural resources. Carrie Wagner from the Office of Enterprise Sustainability will talk about actions you can take at work and in your personal life to reduce your impact on the environment. We hope you find today's event valuable and learn a few things. And as always, you can reach us at mnsustainability@state.mn.gov or check us out on our website at sustainability.mn.gov. And we'll get back to you as quickly as possible. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr. Kate Knuth.
Thanks, Marcus. And wow, how awesome to be here with so many folks working across the state enterprise on making our state work better for people and helping advance sustainability both in state government and more broadly. So I'm Kate Knuth, the Climate Director at the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. I work on the climate section here in the agency and then also help coordinate across state agencies with the climate change sub-cabinet. And really excited to share a little bit more about our climate action framework as well as the progress we've been making. 2 years ago this month, Minnesota released its climate action framework. This is basically our state's plan to address climate change, and it brings together folks across state agencies and more broadly in the state around a 3-part vision for our state in terms of our climate future. We are committed to carbon neutrality by 2050 in the state of Minnesota. We want to be building resilience for communities, businesses, and the natural environment. And we center equity in this work, knowing that climate change makes the inequitable and inaccessible systems we have even worse. And we need to intentionally undo and repair those harms in order to build the kind of climate future we envision for Minnesota. And really in our work, we see these as equal parts of a 3-legged stool: carbon neutrality, resilience, and equity as the climate vision for Minnesota. The targets we're working towards with the Climate Action Framework are reducing greenhouse gases 50% by 2030 from a 2005 baseline and net zero emissions by 2050. And we really are working to prioritize resilience investments over the next decade because we know that investments we make in our infrastructure and our communities now will pay resilience benefits for decades to come. We organize our climate action framework in 6 key goal areas: clean transportation, climate smart natural and working lands, resilient communities, clean energy and efficient buildings, healthy lives and communities, and clean economy. There's lots of different ways you can organize climate work. This is the way we have approached it, and we have a set of interagency goal teams supporting state policy and action in each of these goal areas with the climate action framework. So the Climate Action Framework was released 2 years ago this month. And just this last summer, we released a progress report on the significant progress that we are making on climate action in the state of Minnesota. You'll find this report on the Climate Action Framework website that I'll share at the end of the presentation. In 2023, I'd ask of you in the room, who remembers 2023 as a transformative legislative session? Very much the case in the state of Minnesota, and definitely in terms of climate action. The 2023 legislature had 40 plus climate action programs that were passed into law and funded. And the federal government has really made significant climate investments as well, with the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, as well as the Inflation Reduction Act. Despite its Inflation Reduction Act name, it is one of the biggest, it's actually the biggest climate investment the United States and therefore the world has ever made. And we're, as a result, making huge progress on our climate action framework. So some of the specifics that we have seen in the state of Minnesota as a result of the 2023 legislative session that we are standing up as we speak. One is $100 million for resilient communities. So climate smart infrastructure upgrades, both planning for them and implementing them to protect communities from heat and prepare communities for extreme weather. Clean transportation, as Marcus noted, there's $1 billion plus of transit funding per year funded in the 2023 session, and we're working to make EVs more accessible, both with EV rebates as well as investments in EV chargers and other modes of transportation that are not as much reliant on fossil fuels. The state of Minnesota just this summer received $200 million through the Federal Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program for climate smart food systems. This money is going to go to peatland restoration, climate smart agriculture practices, vehicle and equipment electrification, particularly in the ag sector, cleaner refrigerants and food waste prevention, and really vibrant local food economies as well. This was just noting this was a competition across all 50 states, and just 25 proposals were funded by the EPA with this program. A major policy change in 2023 is carbon-free electricity by 2040. This law is going to enable us to grow our state's clean energy economy, creating jobs and making sure Minnesotans have reliable, affordable, safe, and really importantly, clean energy. And now, folks, if you're working at the Department of Commerce or other state agencies, you're probably helping to implement and make this law the reality. So what's next? We have this climate action framework. It's 2 years old. We've made a huge leap in terms of our investments and our state policies. And I know many folks on this call and more broadly are working every day to implement parts of the climate action framework. But we are actually just starting the process to update our climate action framework. We're going to be updating it in 2025, and we've begun engagement with Minnesotans. So you want to look out for the first opportunity to weigh in on the framework in early November. If you want to follow along with the climate action framework, I really encourage you to dig deeper and look more closely at the specifics of the climate action framework. So what you can do in your personal life, in your role in state government, and also follow along and contribute through the process as we update our climate action frameworks. So check out mn.gov/framework. That's where we'll be putting this. That's where this information lives, and where we'll be updating it as we're updating our climate action framework. Really, it is exciting to see literally hundreds of fellow Minnesota State employees on a call excited about Climate Week and excited about climate action. I really appreciate you being here, and please reach out to me and others on the climate team or in your agencies if you're wanting to learn more and get more involved. I'm going to hand it over to Richard Graves now from the Center for Sustainable Building Research at the University of Minnesota. Thanks, Richard.
Great, thanks, Kate. And thank you for inviting me to Climate Week. I'm Richard Graves. I'm the director of the Center for Sustainable Building Research at the University of Minnesota. And my center has a 20+ year history working with the state on the Minnesota Sustainable Building Guidelines, also known as B3. Let's see, here we go. And, you know, the work in the building sector in Minnesota, kind of spearheaded by the Minnesota Sustainable Building Guidelines, is really a demonstration of climate leadership by the state and state agencies in really kind of 3 areas. And these 3 areas kind of fit into the climate action framework that Kate just talked about. Operational carbon and embodied carbon, the those two things together kind of lead the building sector to meet the carbon neutrality goal. And then an emerging area is really how do we think about kind of resilience and climate adaptation when we think of the building sector. So in terms of the Minnesota Sustainable Building Guidelines, you know, what is it? So it's a program, for those of you who don't know, that was passed by the legislature years ago, almost 20 years ago now, that was to encourage sustainability with state-funded projects. And these are bond-funded projects. They represent kind of a wide variety of projects in the state that hit almost every building type. And these are projects for state agencies, University of Minnesota, Minnesota State, municipalities, nonprofits, and other types of projects. We've had more than 400 projects come through the program over the years, and they're hitting a set of goals that hit a broad range of sustainability topics. So within, you know, and within the sustainability guidelines, in 2007 and 8, the guidelines were updated based on legislation to target carbon and energy, significant carbon and energy goals, with the goal of, and sorry to throw a complicated chart at you, but if you think of a building, that a typical building in 2003, and make it a 100 on a 100-point scale, and a carbon neutral building is a 0, which is our target. The Sustainable Building Guideline Program basically targeted a 10 on this scale, which is basically represents a building that's highly efficient and generating kind of half of its energy from renewable sources. And so for the last 17 years, projects in the state have been kind of working their way down through this graph from typical energy performance to ever more efficient levels of increasing efficiency, to the point in this January 1st, 2025, the program will reach the 90% better than a 2003 building, which represents, you know, all the projects going through getting state funding will be targeting this level of very high performance with half of their renewable energy generated from renewable sources. And this represents a really significant operational carbon target for the state's own construction, probably one of the most significant, if not the most significant goal of any state in the country. And that's being applied. You know, we've had hundreds of projects go through that have helped pave the way, learn lessons along the way, and will encourage hundreds of more projects down the road to meet these targets. And right now, the results of the previous work in the program is saving, you know, millions of energy units and millions of tons of carbon per year, the equivalent of the city of Falcon Heights in energy usage per year is being saved by these projects, and this is just going to go up even more in the coming years with the new sets of goals. The program also has really been leveraged to transform the private sector market as well, because the new energy code trajectories for the commercial energy code and the residential energy code really were built on the foundation that SB 2030 created, of people understanding how do you create, what are the technologies needed, the designs needed to create much more higher performing buildings. And so, you know, as I said, it's operational carbon is important, and operating buildings really efficiently is important. But the other part of carbon neutrality is embodied carbon, or the carbon emissions needed to build buildings. And, you know, as we build more and more efficient projects, highly efficient projects from a carbon's perspective, the embodied carbon emissions could be as much as 72% or much more significant than the operational carbon over the life of the building. So it's something we need to increasingly think about more and more. And fortunately, within our B3 program, our Sustainable Guideline Program, we've had embodied carbon requirements for almost 20 years, longer than I think any other state I know. We've been thinking about embodied carbon and including it into our guidelines. And this has been, you know, shows a significant leadership opportunity of the state in identifying this key issue, and was recognized in 2020 when the European Union was looking at what programs are going on around the world for embodied carbon. The B3 program was one of only 2 programs in North America that were recognized as actually doing some things for embodied carbon. And so the work has been expanding and updating as the building sector is thinking more about embodied carbon. We worked with the Department of Administration to do a report on how can we think about this embodied carbon for construction materials and state procurement for buildings. And then now has expanded where the state of Minnesota is one of 7 states participating in the federal Buy Clean guidelines, thinking about embodied carbon procurement, not only for buildings with the Department of Administration, but also with roads with the Department of Transportation, which again is expanding on this leadership around embodied carbon. And the things that we build for buildings and infrastructure. So in addition to this kind of foundation of thinking about the built environment and achieving our kind of carbon neutrality goals, we also, within the built environment, are in Minnesota, are providing a lot of leadership on how do we think about buildings and climate adaptation for future climate projections, which we know climate is changing in many ways in Minnesota. And our weather data that we use, not just for designing buildings, but for doing a lot of things that we do in planning infrastructure, agriculture, and other things, is outdated. And there's a lot of work, particularly a collaboration between the Minnesota Climate Adaptation Partnership at the University of Minnesota and Pollution Control on supporting the creation of better climate projections. So what we've done at the Center for Sustainable Building Research is leveraging that work on future climate projections and how can we use it in the built environment. And this has been built upon some work that we were supported again by MPCA in 2018 to think about integrating resilience into the Minnesota Sustainable Building Guidelines, which thought about using future climate files, analyze the existing sustainability guidelines, and set a pathway of how we would integrate resilience into the program, which, by the way, the statute was modified in the last legislative session. So now it's the Minnesota Sustainable and Resilient Building Guidelines when you think about B3. And in addition, the program looked at different building types and how do we think about them and with climate adaptation, including certain building types like libraries, community centers, and schools that could serve as resilience hubs to serve Minnesota communities and help the broader community, not just one building, adapt to a future climate. And it's a future climate that, you know, we're looking at a variety of climate projections in terms of temperature, precipitation, and other things within the building sector and in different time frames, and how will that affect a variety of different building types in terms of how they use energy, what mechanical systems are involved, what building systems and building envelopes need to be set and designed to kind of help resist climate change impacts in a warming climate in the heating season and the cooling season. And so, you know, all of this sort of represents a collaboration that we've been working on with state agencies over 20 years. That's really kind of leading the development and application of future climate projections to forecast, assess, and plan for a built environment in Minnesota that will continue to be healthy for Minnesota, the people of Minnesota, and the environment of Minnesota in a dynamic future. So thanks again for the invitation to speak to all of you for Climate Week. And I also need to thank, you know, everyone on this call, either individually or for all of your agencies that have kind of worked with us over the years on the sustainability guidelines and projects that we use to get feedback on how to build the future built environment that not only is carbon neutral, but resilient in the face of a dynamic climate in the future. So thank you, everyone. And now I will hand it off to Kari, who's going to talk about the state of sustainability. Thanks, everybody. Or sorry, to Marcus, I apologize.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you, Richard. Phenomenal. Great to hear about both the Climate Action Framework and B3 and what the work that's going on to decarbonize buildings that are funded by the state. So I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about the sustainability work that you all and all of your agency colleagues are doing to reduce your environmental footprint at your own agency through your own agency operations. Let's see, I think I gotta take control. I'm gonna learn how to use slides here someday. So first thing that I want to emphasize is that as an enterprise, as a state operations, all of the agencies together share in these goals. And I won't read them, but we do have goals in reducing our fossil fuel use in our fleet, reducing our energy use in our buildings, reducing our water consumption, diverting solid waste to recycling and organics, and also in sustainable procurement, and of course reducing our greenhouse gas emissions as a total from our operations. You can learn more about this work at sustainability.mn.gov, or you can check out an executive order that helps guide this work as 19-27. So our office, the Office of Enterprise Sustainability, sits at kind of the center of trying to provide assistance to agencies and coordinate this across the enterprise. And so a couple of the big things that we do is we coordinate reporting and planning. And so all of your agencies are sending in data to us about how much energy you're using in your facilities and water you're using. We are gathering data on how much fossil fuel use you're using in your fleets, how much solid waste you're producing, and we compile all of that so we can track and report against our goals. We work on planning, and we also helped to implement projects from time to time, but most importantly, we get to champion best practices and the need for resources. And so many of your agencies are doing great work, and we're going to touch on that. And what we try to do is help elevate that great work and make sure that we have an opportunity to replicate it across the enterprise. So as I said, you can learn more at our website. This is a image of the landing page, but what's important here is that what we're trying to do is lift up all of your work at the agencies, you going about your work, delivering your programs and services to the residents of Minnesota. And in doing so, you're also reducing the impact on the environment from your own operations. And you can see that we highlight some numbers on the website, and importantly, we're avoiding costs from energy efficiency work and energy conservation, and we're also avoiding emissions. And so on average, since we started this work from 2005, we're on average avoiding about 200,000 metric tons of emissions annually. You can also learn more about each of our focus areas, and I'll just zip into one. And this is a view of how we're doing against our fleet fossil fuel goal. So we take all the fossil fuel use in our fleet vehicles in the state. There's about 12,000 on-highway vehicles and many, many, many pieces of equipment. And we track the fuel use here. And we show that we've achieved about 16% change or reduction in fuel use, and we're 52% progress towards our goal. But what's really great is you can go and check out at your own agency and see your fossil fuel use. And you can do this likewise for every focus area. So there's a drop down when you get to the graphic on our site, and it'll show you your agency, and you can learn more there. And shout out to agriculture here, of course. And some of this, they'll say, you know, I'll mention it because we're here, is that you know, our operations changed significantly after COVID, and some of that we see actually increased or decreased our environmental footprint, or was sort of a wash. And so you'll see kind of that signature here, the dramatic fall after 2019. But then it means that post-COVID, we've changed the way we deliver our services, right? We're not returning to that same level of fuel use, which is a great story to tell. So at your agency, you all have a sustainability coordinator, and we really want to encourage you, if you have questions, to reach out to them at the end of this call, either today or tomorrow. As a reminder, we'll send out a list of all the sustainability coordinators at your agencies to the folks that attended this, and you can contact them if you have ideas or want to participate. So they do a lot of the same things we do, but for the agency. So they coordinate planning and reporting work. They advance the best practice work and at your agency, and they also do engagement with agency team members. So many agencies have a sustainability team or a green team or something along those lines. And I think most agencies now are sending out sustainability related messaging and employee newsletters about what we can do to reduce our environmental footprint. And so I want to highlight, this is what's very cool, is every year we get to give out sustainability awards, or I should say the sustainability steering team does, and chaired by Lieutenant Governor, gives out sustainability awards. And so we're going to share with you the 2023 winners. So the 2023 winners, big shout out, they're listed here, but we can see the Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs produced a video on how to operate a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. I've noticed there's been some hands up or some comments, and we are gonna take your comments and then we'll respond to them by email. So we do appreciate that. Go ahead, put them in the comment box if you have them or questions, and we'll respond by email. But we really appreciate that. The Department of Corrections doing significant work to do what's called, to do energy assessments at their facilities, which is a huge portfolio of real estate, and so that's amazing work to be able to assess all of their facilities. Military Affairs using smart salting practices to reduce the salt use in their winter snow clearing. Natural Resource for a couple of solar projects they completed in 2023. Human Services for the disposition of and reuse of furniture in a large move and reorganization of their agency. And then also Minute in helping to reduce packaging for all of the equipment that we all use. So Minute's working hard for all of us to help reduce our environmental footprint by reducing packaging of all the equipment that we take. And so that's amazing. And then we also, in addition to talking about award winners and individual awards, so this is, we like applaud you, and previous award winners are also visible on our website at sustainability.mn.gov if you want to see and encourage your sustainability coordinators to apply on your behalf. We've received many, many awards every year, and so we're really excited to share all the good work. And then in 2023, we wanted to highlight the Department of Military Affairs, who has for a long time, as part of their mandate from the National Guard and DoD, been advancing sustainability work. And you can see some of their projects here. There really are champions in all things to reduce solid waste or divert it to recycling and organics, reduce their water consumption, install EV charging equipment, engage members in a sustainability group. And so we're really excited to have them as a partner, and we can share their best practices. And so that concludes my comments for the day. I'm going to turn it over to one of our team members, Carrie Wagner, who's going to share with you some actions that you can take at work and in your personal life to advance sustainability.
Thank you, Marcus. My name is Carrie. I'm the Enterprise Communications and Solid Waste Specialist with the Office of Enterprise Sustainability team at the Department of Administration. I hope you are all feeling as energized as I am after listening to those amazing speakers. And you might now be asking yourself, what can I do? How can I be more sustainable? One way we can all contribute to our sustainability goals at work is by following green meeting guidelines. These guidelines help us reduce fossil fuel use by encouraging virtual meetings and events when feasible, and thoughtful location planning when being in person is necessary, such as locations near alternative transportation hubs or bike trails, or providing carpooling networks. These guidelines also help us reduce waste by encouraging electronic documents, buffet-style meals, opting for reusable serviceware, and encouraging attendees to bring their own water bottles. Additionally, the guidelines increase solid waste diversion by detailing bin best practices, like having your recycling and trash bins next to each other and color coding them and ensuring all bins are labeled accurately. You can reference these guidelines whether you are planning, attending, or hosting a meeting or event. If you're not sure if your agency has a green meeting guideline or a policy in place, you can reach out to your agency at Sustainability Coordinator to learn more. At work and in our personal lives, recycling is a great way to reduce our environmental impact and live more sustainably. Recycle right with these tips. Recycle clean paper and cardboard. Empty plastic containers labeled in the recycling triangle as number 1, number 2, and number 5 are recyclable in most areas throughout our state. Recycle your empty and clean aluminum and steel cans. And don't forget to keep caps on bottles and don't crush your cans, bottles, or jugs. Even better than recycling, though, is not producing the waste in the first place. Choose durable, reusable items over disposable ones. Bring a tote bag to the grocery store to avoid plastic bags, or have your favorite coffee shop fill your travel mug instead of taking a disposable single-use one. Choosing to reuse does more than just keeping items out of the landfill. It saves money, water, and energy. Speaking of energy and water, conserving energy and water is another way you can take action and be sustainable. We're using energy all the time without even knowing it. One easy thing we can all do is unplug devices or turn off power strips when they're not in use. Even if your devices are not on, they're still consuming energy. As we enter fall, keep in mind that wearing layers and turning your thermostat down just a few degrees is a great way to conserve energy and see savings directly on your electric bill. To amplify those savings, consider switching to LEDs, which are more energy efficient light bulbs. Water is essential to our way of life in Minnesota, from our more than 10,000 lakes to our streams and our rivers. But did you know the average Minnesotan uses 52 gallons of water per day? Simple actions like reducing the length of our showers, only washing full loads of laundry, planting native plants in your garden that are drought resistant, and limiting your use of irrigation helps to reduce our consumption of water. Taking small actions to live a sustainable life can have a really big impact and help us reach our goals. And with that, I will turn it back over to our moderator, Marcus.
I'm sorry. Okay, here we go. Sorry. Yeah, so thank you for joining us today. We appreciate it. You can see our email on our website. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat or email us. We'll get back to you directly. And again, we're going to send out to all the attendees today a PDF of the slide deck with our with a list of the sustainability coordinators and their email at each agency. And I just again want to thank Dr. Kay Knuth and Dr. Richard Graves for their time today and sharing their valuable expertise with us. So thank you, and thank you for attending.